Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of GameCamp webinars. Welcome. Today we'll have another edition focused on the founder's journey. So we have two amazing gaming founders who will be sharing their experience with you, especially focusing on how they were learning from iterations and the different changes, pivots, adjustments they need to make during the journey, how they actually they are changing their company, their product management, and looking at their business. So welcome to the stage, our amazing speakers. So welcome Mika Ahonen, who is co-founder of Lightheart Entertainment. Hello, Mika.
Hello, Marius. Awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Let's welcome the Zbig Woznowski, who is co-founder and CEO of the Reality Games.
Hello. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Zbig. And let's welcome Alec, who works at Google for Startups, and who will be like today with us as well.
Hi, Marius. Thanks for the invitation.
Great. Thank you guys for coming. In this case, today we have two amazing presentations. So if we go actually to quite important topic, as always, you can really join the discussion and ask questions at Slido. Just go to the www.sli.do. So just go to the Slido and write GameCamp as the name of the event, and then you can join discussion, ask questions. Again, it's really unique opportunity to ask founders who made quite amazing journey about the approach to business. So not spending more time on the introduction, let's invite our first speaker, John, who will actually be talking about his journey, how he was pivoting, changing his directions, and what kind of lessons he actually has for people who are thinking about founding startups and working startups. John, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. So Marius asked me, if I could share some of my stories. So today I want to share with you my story of the failures, how I started the business in a new industry without any kind of experience, barely without money, in the industry that is more profitable than narco cartels. It is also a little more dynamic. So the story begins in 2015. I was 33 and I had 16 years of professional experience, basically how not to run a business. So my last startup has failed, and so I had some free time and I started to play mobile games. I came across a game called Landlord, and it was something like Monopoly game, but in real life. You were able to buy real-world properties around you thanks to GPS in your device. So I was so amazed that I have even bought a bike to travel and explore more properties. Oh, this is a photo of me in 2014 in the winter going back from my trip because I wanted to buy some properties outside my city before anyone else. So that time, and the game was very badly designed and it was crashing a lot, but this didn't stop me to spend over $800 in in-app purchases. So that tricked me again. This is what I want to do next. Make a cool game that will be selling virtual stuff for real money. Easy peasy. I have written an email to the founder, and the guy was a self-taught programmer and chartered accountant. He made that game because he wanted to, do something serious after his MBA studies. So after 2 years of struggling, he has launched the product, but he didn't find an investor. So I decided to fly to London and I have talked to him. That time, I didn't have any free monies for investment, but the potential of this deal was so tempting that I have found another programmer from a startup network, and I have explained him the deal. We are buying this game, and I was the CEO, and he was the CTO. So here we come with the lesson number one. that you can create your own opportunity. So we have all signed the papers. We have paid something about £1,200 each, and at that time I thought that my CTO will fix the game, but and we will start making money. But instead he said, we need to find somebody who will fix it. Then I said, let's make a company and let's find investors. And after like 50 meetings and hearing no, not interested, no way I'll invest $50,000 for this project, I have decided to apply to some startup accelerators around the world. So we got through a few of them, and we have decided to join Oxygen Accelerator from Google Campus. The deal was not so bad, and we were chosen from over 650 startups. This is me again on that photo, pitching about how we are going, to conquer the gaming industry. So we did. We got all the hype, prestige, and very little money. But at that time, our company was officially valued at $500,000. So when the original founder has heard that we have done it, he decided to join us. So 3 of us, making a startup. So during the acceleration period, we had many meetings. Some of them were very funny, like this one from Riyadh representatives. We were thinking that we are building something big. We had a demo day, and I was in television. We all were thinking, about millions from investors who will definitely invest in us tomorrow, or the latest next week. Unfortunately, our CTO has left us a month before the demo day. He went to work to another startup. So then we have this launching, this magic launching, and we are very enthusiastic on day one. And then we have actually realized that we will not fly very high. We were getting about 100 downloads and about $100 per day. And then my original founder decided to leave because he wanted to start a proper job where he will be getting, a salary. So this is another lesson we have. Actually, I have learned, and this lesson is very important. That there was no chance to run the business together. Each one of us had a different sense of risk, and we didn't know each other enough to understand it. So at that moment, our product revenue was less than half of the salary of one developer, and in the product we needed 3 of them. This is the moment where I actually realized that I have no technical knowledge. The accelerator didn't sign us papers, so we are in the company of 2 not active founders, and me, who has 31% of shares in the business, and I'm left alone. So I was already 7 months without the salary, and of course no vision for the salary for the next months. So no chance to raise any money, because investors will unlikely fund a lonely founder in technical product. And my wife just told me that we should be expecting a baby. So this is the moment for another lesson. If you feel in your guts that something can fly, but you can't easily explain it, try to take the helicopter view. So coming back to the same slide, let's see what was positive. So this healthy view was hidden. I actually started to talk to players, and they were like me 6 months ago when I was buying, properties. Also, we had very small scale but very good numbers according to the, industry benchmark. Who would like to have retention D30, 44%? Something like that. Of course, there's always about the scale. But when I learned that, I decided, to go a bit further. So I was looking for the mentor, and I found them in the startup industry, and they helped me a lot. You know, they explained me that that's big. You should work on it. It's just a matter of time. You know, you'll manage to get a better traction, and you'll solve the problems. So the second step was, you know, to try to find some cash for the servers. So we went to the Rackspace, Google Cloud Platform, and even IBM. So this is how we got $250,000 for servers. This is important moment because I had to come back to Poland because it was difficult to survive in UK with a team of 3, and I have decided also to sell my apartment and explained to my wife that we'll rent one. And it was a pure love and big belief from the pregnant woman who agrees to have a less security and more risk with me. So for the next 7 months, I was keeping product alive, you know, basically like that, working from my bedroom, and all the time I was working and thinking about the big launch. I was trying to cut costs everywhere it was possible, even when we were buying, you know, any kind of graphics at that time. You know, our main character is coming from the iStock. It was costing us 24 euros. And that time, I had one guy who believed in me, you know, and he was a graphic designer, and he has accepted the job of creating 3,653 different graphic files, you know, without asking for salary. Why? Because, you know, we were localizing the product into 50 languages, and also so we needed the text. So we asked our players, could they help? And of course they did that. So that was another hell easy thing to do, because we had a product with a localization for 50 languages, full localization, Google, Apple, and we were getting close. So getting close is there was an idea of trying to impress some journalists. So I have created a massive PR campaign, wrote about 69,000 individual emails to journalists all over the world. And we had a launching day. So the launching day, it was this moment where, you know, I was waiting so many months, you know, to actually finally launch it. So we did. And after 4 hours, Google has suspended our app, actually our account. And the reason was simple. You know, we have used the word monopoly in the description to describe our game. You know, it was, and that moment I was very close to the heart attack, because coming back, 18 months without salary, problematic ownership issue, 150K private money invested, Google has suspended our product. So what else can go wrong? So, and of course, I need to pretend in front of my wife that I'm a very successful businessman. So, in that moment, we decided to take, once again, the helicopter view, and we have set up a new developer account, upload all of the images, and launch it again. So, launching again after 2 days nearly, actually looked like that. So app was crashing. 12% of players were not able to play. Server was restarting every 4 hours. And there was nobody else except this friend of mine, Mika, you know, who was actually a graphic designer that time. But we started to grow. And this grow was significant. It was like 10% per week. But actually, it would be much bigger, you know, if not the problem with the servers. So, you know, all numbers were growing like crazy, and of course organically. You know, 12 million people have downloaded our game. They were spending a lot of money inside. The highest whale has spent over $95,000. You know, so we are coming to the very popular lesson. No matter how many times they hit you, you need to stand up and keep moving. So we did another look around, and we have compared ourselves to the market. But we knew that working from home on Skype with a bunch of freelancers has ended, and we have to make some, serious decisions. So we came, what to do next. Remember, I was not in the gaming industry before, so I had no clue how to organize it. So we started from getting some PR first. Then we decided to look for the office space. But then one clever thing, actually, I came up with from my previous startups. Actually, we have built the ESOP program for all people, and 20% of the shares went to our team. Then was another good idea to buy out the investors. They have received 12 times return of investment after 16 months. It was also a good time to buy out our not active founders. One of them was very fair and just decided to get his investment back. Another one was a little bit more greedy, and we paid him a lot. He received enough to buy a house, sport car, and even some cash for entertainment. But this number is actually our currently, daily revenue. So here we come with the lesson number 7. I have followed my instincts and signed the buyout papers soon enough. The next few years were actually a mixture of success and failure. For example, we started to copycat ourselves. We launched Donut Trumpet Tycoon. We went organically as a #1 game in US in strategy. We have made some $1 million, and it was just 4 weeks of work. But then we were thinking, that we are so great that everything what we will do will be a great success. So in Weather Challenge, we have spent quite a big budget, because it was like $500,000. It was, you cannot see the game like that, because it was a prediction game based on weather. What kind of weather will be in the nearest future outside your window? So we have connected over 300,000 weather stations, and the game had amazing D1 retention and terrible D3 retention. So actually, everybody wanted to play this game for one day, and then they actually have realized that this game is boring. So we have learned that we will not get our money back on this project. So we decided to kill it. Then we are coming back to our prototype on steroids, which actually made some great numbers, which actually built the company. Important to say is that our first feature from Google was, after 4 years. So from today's perspective, actually we know that we don't want to have a feature, because it's very bad for the numbers, for the clarity of data analytics. But we have spent almost 3 years to build a new landlord from scratch. This time it is Landlord Go. We have launched it last year in the summer at the worst possible moment, because during the COVID, people do not travel. They move 50% less. However, the first weeks we managed to get 1 million users, and today this sum has already tripled. The Landlord Go performs 70% better than its predecessor, and it's also the first game from our stable in which we have abandoned the previous business model. organic traffic generated by stores in a favor to the paid traffic. So actually that was this radical change. Now the entire company needs to be related to the growth. And actually we are coming to the lesson number 8, invest in growth. Of course, we didn't forget to get some visibility in the media. Actually, there are not so many games that are capable to generate such a big interest in media. We have got over 1,500 press articles, radio, TV interviews. It's important to understand that that you can't count traffic from articles. So the article will not generate you a download or many downloads, but it is important to treat them as a backlinks for your ASO strategy. But the most important is to understand and learn traditional UA. These competences are must-have if you are in free-to-play business. So starting from how much risk you need to take at the beginning, and those decisions, the cost of learning is very high. Or maybe you will be successful and you will find somebody from the industry who will come and teach you that, because we didn't do that. We started our own. So there are many aspects here, but basically from the business perspective, you need to monitor your cash flow and understand the risk you are making. And then there is just a matter of tests. What markets are working for you the best. What kind of channels. We decided to go for with Google and Facebook, but basically Google Universal Ads are the best for us, and we put the biggest money there. A lot of effort to understand lifetime value curve. This is something where you need to have analytics guys, because without it will be a nightmare. And of course, understanding that not everything comes right away. The measurement, the creatives, the data. And you need to have an understanding of the connection, between UA activities and the product, and how actually growth is important, to not only from the marketing perspective, but actually from the product perspective. This is a big culture change for the company which didn't do the UA before. But we have made another attempt. We started to learn more about growth with the influencers. So our growth team has made over 200 influencer deals in past 6 months for almost $250,000. And the idea was to create it in a way that we understand what kind of numbers are appearing, and is it possible to repeat that. So we have created our growth engine, which is searching for the influencers thanks to API on YouTube, and then we are gathering the data, and we know very well our target group. So this is helping us to score the influencers and the deals, and actually we can generate the prediction number, how much we should pay to the influencer, what's the maximum to be profitable for us. And this engine is working quite well. And from our five last campaigns, 3 of them have reached the return of advertising spent in less than 14 days. And this is our, the second leg for growth. So another aspect is that we believe that the very important move will be being present in China. So getting the ISBN number is very important. We were invited to Chinese pilot free trade zone, and we're in technology park there. And hopefully, when the China will lift up the stops at the borders, we'll be able to go further. Then there is another layer. We have research and developed project related with our game data. We are asking our players to help us build a better game in a very natural way for them. So some players can see our mini game instead of traditional reward video. And we are asking them to position the icon on the camera feed when they are outside. And this is very important because they are building for us a future AR map of buildings. Thanks to that, we are going to be ready for the next big thing. And this next big thing is, we believe that when Apple will announce this product, we will be able to sell, and they will be able to sell at least 100 million devices per year. And this is very likely that they will open a new marketplace for apps that will be working on glasses. And we want to be one of the first movers of this new hype and launch a game directly for glasses. And last thing, I think it would be that it's very likely that the next Monopoly game will be made by the company who was suspended 5 years ago for using the trademark. So coming back again, I'm trying to explain how how all this happened. So we're coming to the academic understanding. So we learn through our mistakes, and this learning curve image can be used for everything. It can be used for if you want to go for a diet, or if you want to learn a language or something new. For me, this is the illustration that is explaining all the actions we went through, and still not sure exactly where we are right now, but yeah, thank you for your attention. I would say that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for a very interesting and inspirational presentation. Maybe before actually we go to the next presentation, I will ask you, someone from the crowd asked, is it good to have the co-founder, or it's better to develop the company by yourself? If it's better to have the co-founder, how to look for the right person? Yeah? What is your view and your experience? Because you had actually a lot of experience with that topic in the past.
I do have. What I would say is, if you are having a friend, and you know this person for at least a couple of years, and you know each other, and this friend is the best guy for one type of things, like is he a tech guy or is he a business guy, and you don't know anybody else who is better than him, and you trust him, then you should do the company together. You should. That's the thing. But if you don't know the best guy, and you are not friends, and then I would definitely suggest to do it yourself. That will be much more difficult. That will be, but still the mistakes will be yours, and you will not spend time for messing around for things which are not good and healthy for the business.
Thank you, John. Yeah. So actually no. So please stay with us because at the end of we have Q&A and discussion. Thank you again. And now let's invite our second speaker, Mika.
Hello.
Hello, Mika. So Mika will be talking about his learning, especially about how what are his learnings from changing the product, managing the different product decisions on his side. Hello, Mika. The stage is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Marius. Hello, everyone, and thanks again for the Google folks for inviting me here. I'm super happy to be presenting something after, I guess, 2 years of 2 years is too much. 1 year and 3 months of not really seeing people anywhere. So my name is Mika. I'm one of the co-founders of Lightheart Entertainment. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. So pretty much this is kind of a chronological account of 2 years of product decisions at Lightheart. So first of all, I'm going to go into kind of starting with why. So why Lightheart Entertainment as a company exists. Then after that, I'm going to talk about our way of approaching prototyping and concepting, kind of how we create new games at Lightheart. And finally, I'll go through some of the key decisions that we've done with Mr. Rotifier during the time that it's been live. So let's get on with it. So a little bit about myself. So I'm responsible for product at Lightheart. We founded the company in June 2019. So actually, we just turned 2 years. I think, yeah, we're like 2 years and 10 days old now. Founded by 6 industry veterans. Pretty much, the founding team had all the critical parts that we could ship a game with the founding team. That was kind of one of the ideas that we had at that point. Before I was at Lightheart, I worked 8 years at Rovio, so the Angry Birds company. Also in mostly in product positions. I wore many hats. I mean, 8 years, you get to do a lot of stuff. I was an analyst, I was a game designer, I was a product manager, and then in the last 3 years, I was a game lead or an executive producer. So basically, basically in charge of individual games and the game team. Some of the games that I worked on, actually, like bulk of the time, I was working on free-to-play casual puzzle games. So kind of the games of the Candy Crush type. Angry Birds Smash still going strong. One of the, if not the cutest games in the App Store. I also work in Angry Birds Friends. That's more of a traditional slingshot game. So the Angry Birds that you all know. I also worked on Small Town Murderers, which is a puzzle game with the murder mystery narrative. And I did get a chance to take a stab in other genres as well. Some of you might have tried Battle Bay. If it's not familiar, think of it as the World of Tanks, but with boats. So that kind of a game. And I mean, as you can see, I spent a long time at Rovio. I was actually super happy there. The company treated me very, very well. But also, I'm still young enough that 8 years is a long time for me. So I did think that I was ready to a change of environment, just because I'd been there for such a long time. But kind of being bored is not a great reason to start a company, or at least it's not like good enough for me. Also, like back in 2019, the world was already changed to a point where founding a game company didn't seem like the greatest idea in the world. The industry had already gotten quite capital intensive in how you can scale your products. So basically, getting users to play your game was getting hard, and it was also more and more difficult to actually raise money for mobile free to play, which wasn't the case 5-6 years back. Still, it was seemingly easy to get at least your initial seed funding. So why did we start Lightheart? Also, like the founders were quite employable. I think I'd like to think we still are. So we could have taken a job at some game company here in Finland. However, like we had all recent background in larger companies. Lots of that experience has been very, very valuable in how we run Lightheart, and we are super grateful for that. Lots of good memories, lots of good learning. There were also times that we were frustrated, sometimes in the kind of dysfunctions of a bigger organization that, like, many of you may have had in your own companies as well. It's just like something that big organizations tend to do, that it's sometimes harder to make decisions that you want, and all that. We can also become quite acutely aware that lots of passionate people who love making games do it very passionately and are good at it. They might even burn out at some point, and some even quit games, like the whole industry, and start doing something else. And this was something that, like, we thought that we'd like to try and solve, and this is a kind of enter Lightheart. So we wanted to build a company where we'd like to work ourselves in. And at this point, one of the co-founders, Chris, he had already read this book, Reinventing Organizations by Frederic Laloux. The book is about self-managing organizations. So we decided to go that way. The topic is broad enough that, like, it could warrant another talk altogether, but maybe to simplify it a bit, basically, all employees are self-managed. Anyone can make any decision, as long as you ask advice from people who know more about the subject than you, and those who will be impacted by the decision. For example, like, we self-set our salaries, which is a nice anecdote to share. There's more information in Chris's blog post on Medium that I've linked down there, and also, like, you can look up the book if you're interested. I'm highlighting this, like, basically for two reasons. First of all, I think a company should have a purpose of existing. It makes everything so much easier when the purpose is not just let's make a lot of money. That would be the result of filling your purpose. The second is that this kind of culture that is based on trust and ability for each talented game developer to do decisions independently. It's also kind of very core to the way we make games, and kind of we honestly believe that it helps us make better games. And for example, I mean, we're kind of off to a good start there. We did manage to ship Mr. Rotifier quite fast with kind of this culture and this way of working, and we've managed to grow to 13 full-time employees. Maybe, I hope a couple of more still to be added in the coming months, as we're actually hiring right now. Which brings us to a great segue to the next topic, which is, like, how we ended up with Mr. Rotifier. So we had sat down with the founders. The month was, I think, May 2019. We had a group of excited game developers basically ready to go. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you have a game team and they're kind of just ready to start work on anything at all. It's like an empty canvas. It's both exciting, but it's also daunting at the same time. This is actually, like, from our very first office, I think, from the summer 2019. I'm not sure if it's June actually, but it could be. That's Jouni looking at the camera on the right, and Mikko working on art with the two monitors, and Kalle, our CEO, in the back. We even had a whiteboard. I think I was the only one who used it. But yeah, anyway, it's kind of then what? So my colleagues placed great trust in me in letting me figure out to kind of like what is the box in which we should be creating games in, kind of like what are our constraints. So what type of games should we start creating? So I started working on that constraint. That was the first thing that I contributed at Lightheart. And what does a person like me do when faced with a task like that? I look at data. So I opened App Annie and I looked at recent successes by small teams. This slide is from 2019 actually. I have not changed it. So what I figured out is that actually the market is still full of chances for small teams to do big things. All of these 4 games were done by small teams, up to 15 people, sometimes less, but not a lot more. And during that time, 2019, I think like everyone kind of knows the history of hyper casual games. So every year up until like I guess last year at least, they were growing, and taking more and more downloads out of the total downloads pie. While the amount of downloads didn't grow, the amount of downloads, the percentage taken by hyper casual grew. And these games were not hyper casual games, yet they were marketed with core gameplay. So they kind of sit in between. They have core gameplay that can sell them, but they also have a stable IAP business. And I thought that this is something that we might want to go for. And kind of like hyper casual games, we knew that we don't want to do hyper casual because of the way that the business works. You need to make a game and a game and a game, and it's so hit driven that it's just churning out these games game after another, and it's hard to create like a stable IAP business on top of that. But there's one thing that we wanted to take from hyper casual, and that is presentation. So we wanted our games to look more like Crazy Kick, less like AFK Arena. So we could basically just show video of the gameplay. It would look awesome, fun, and you would click on the ad and install. Maybe some words about Archero, because Archero had just come out. And I mean, like our game is Rotifier. If you've played it, you might notice the similarities in the way that the game is structured. And Archero is a great game. If you make games for a living, you learn to cherish these moments of true discovery and joy when you find something that is like actually fresh and fun to interact with. And I had that with Archero in April 2019. But professionally, I was even more excited about Archero in terms of the structure of the progression systems that it had. It appeared to have solved something that I don't remember any other game to have solved before it, which is meaningful progression for a skill-based game, for a skill-based PvE game. And me and my colleagues back then at Rovio, we were all grinding these worlds, we were collecting gear, and even spending money in this seemingly skill-based game. And for a long time, it was an industry truth that you cannot make money with IAPs in skill-based arcade games. You just cannot. That is impossible. So we were witnessing the latest of these free-to-play truths to crumble. I mean, like, there's many of these. Maybe someone remembers when it was a fact that you can't make money with narrative games in free-to-play, and then along comes Choices in the episode. Or you can't make money with word games on mobile, and then Wordscapes comes around. And I guess the latest would be first-person shooters, which are, of course, impossible to do on mobile because the game feel is not blah, 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 blah. Then we have Fortnite and Call of Duty. You get the point. So I saw Happy actually solve this progression. It's like a design problem that they solved with Archero. And we thought there's something there. So after all of this and some nice slides, this is actually not enough to be actionable for making prototypes. So I started to kind of go deeper into what the constraints could actually be. So, and this is what I came up with first. So we need to be able to deliver a testable game in 3 months. Why 3? I mean, it doesn't really matter. It could be 2, it could be maybe 4, but it certainly can't be 12 months if we only have a runway for 6. So let it be 3. The core gameplay needs to look so fun that people click and install when they see it. Kind of, I covered it already. Not only will you get users more easily, but you save a lot of money and effort in the way that you actually can produce your ad creatives. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to say about this. This means that we should go for simple designs. We shouldn't go for complexity. We shouldn't go for content-heavy games. This means gameplay that kind of explains itself. And this means not relying on deep systems, not relying on complicated gameplay rules that are hard to understand. We want to use a tried and true progression system. Why? People seldom play games because of their progression systems. They play the game, and then there's a progression systems that works with the game and keeps them playing. And there's many out there that already work. Innovating in progression systems is actually pretty hard and time-consuming. So why not just focus on innovating on core gameplay and use something that works on the progression system? And finally, we need to be excited about it. Kind of obvious, games are entertainment. Making games is a creative activity. If we are excited about what we are creating, not only will we be happier while doing it, but the end result will be better. We ended up iterating on this a couple of times, and what we ended up with was 5 questions that we would ask ourselves for each prototype that we create. And these are the 5 questions. So first, is the game fun to play? Second, will the gameplay video explain itself in a short marketing video? 3, can we use progression and monetization from an existing successful free-to-play game? 4, can we ship this in 3 months with enough scope to measure IPM, so installs per mil, which is a metric for marketability of the game, and day 1 retention, which is a metric of did players enjoy it. So can we get people to install it, and do they enjoy it? And 5, do you see yourself working on this? You might ask how we measure this. Great question, simple answer. It's entirely subjective by design. Each team member would answer these questions for each prototype that we have. You might also ask, what does good look like? In our experience, the best prototypes get almost universal yes answers to these questions. Of course, like this works for us because we have scoped the kind of type of the game to this arcade type of a game for now. But when we're doing that kind of a games, like the good ones tend to get basically just yes answers. Any no or don't know is worth an open discussion, and then you will find out like how bad is that no, or is it just like maybe the team member was not sure, or maybe they didn't understand, or maybe they have a very, very valid concern that you can fix with altering the design or whatever. You can think of it as a structured way of getting the heat of the room for each game stop that you create. And then off we went to prototype. And the way we structured it was like everyone kind of like, we talked about obviously this for a while. And everyone was like, okay, thumbs up, looks pretty good. We can work with this. And everyone was pitching in on ideas. Me and a senior designer that we contracted at the time, we since hired him. He's a great guy. We worked these ideas into functional specs. Functional specs scope was small enough that one programmer could make a playable in a couple of days. Our 2 programmers are very resourceful though, so we could get done a lot. Probably not every programmer could work as efficiently as like really good prototyping programmers. And this was in June, and we set a date to August. So the time box for the whole prototyping effort was like 2 months. And yeah, so 2 months later, fast forward to mid-August, we sat down and assessed what we had. On the right side, you can see some of the pictures of the prototypes. Some are more concept art, some are actual gray box prototypes, kind of like our artist was doing concept art at the same time as we were doing the gray box prototypes to kind of figure out if we go for this game, what could it look like, and so on. So we had actually we had one cooking game. It's not there. We had 2 car games, one top down, one sideways, kind of a shooting car game thing. We had a planetary shooter game. We had the wingsuit game, and in the middle you can actually see the Mr. Rotifier prototype, which looks surprisingly similar to what it looks today. And for the 10 digital prototypes that we did, we kind of 7 made it to the shortlist. They had like enough meat that we could actually assess them. 3 we dropped down because like during the creation we already thought that like this is not going to work. And for all of these 7 prototypes, everyone in the team answered this like sheet of 5 questions. 2 prototypes actually got good amount of yes answers. Then we discussed. Then we had some subjective scoring. So basically, everyone had 3 points to give however they want. And then we took the decision to go for Mr. Rotifier. In this case, we had a clear winner. We did this later in the beginning of this year, actually, like with new games. And when you don't have a clear winner, it's a much more difficult decision. But I think the process still seemed to work when we did it again. So we've done this at least 2 times. And then we shipped. Kind of a fast forward 3 months. We shipped in late November. So we managed the 3 months schedule that we set out for ourselves. And the scope was 2 worlds. The second world was quite ruthless in difficulty, just so we stretched out the content. There was enough gameplay for, generally saying, about 3 days. If you play a lot, maybe 2 days. We had 5 ad creatives, pure core gameplay. Actually, the one that the GIF animation that I'm using is one of the ad creatives that we used originally. It's actually me doing the acting there, controlling Mr. Rotifier there. And the metrics that we were interested in were just those 2 that I've listed there. So IPM or impression to install conversion, and day 1 retention. That's all we looked at. And I mean, they looked good. So we made the call of let's not stop doing this yet, which is I guess a Finnish way of saying let's continue doing it. After 3 months of additional work on this, the game started actually already make some money for us. So the next decision in March or so to continue still working on it was pretty easy. We were able to start scaling the marketing in April. So that's kind of when the shifts from improving the metrics to basically optimizing towards return on ad spend happened. So that was like 2020 April. So in total, we took like 6 months to develop the game after the initial launch before we started scaling. Some could say that that's soft launch, but we actually immediately released in the US. So it was a kind of soft launch, kind of just a launch. Okay. Finally, what then? So what then again? So we had the game live. It seems okay. How do you prioritize what you work on next? Like how do you figure out what do you do with the game? I'm not going to show you any graphs or data, just like a couple of examples of problems that we tackle and our solution to it. The idea is to show basically like our way of thinking more than anything else. So this is maybe relevant for anyone or anyone who's launched a game might be kind of familiar with this. It's not like when you're developing a game and it's not out yet that you're developing it in a vacuum. You're still testing it with other people than the development team. You might even do some user tests, whatnot, but it's not the same as actually releasing it to real players and starting to get that quantitative data in to stare at, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. At best, it's an invaluable tool. At worst, it can paralyze your decision making. So with great power comes great responsibility. And your mindset kind of shifts from let's ship this game to continuously improving the game. Instead of creating a game, you're maintaining a live service. And initially, when you launch the game, your goal might be, let's improve the game, let's improve the metrics of the game. And like you can go more and more specific. But ultimately, your goal will be to scale up the business of the game. And it's not always 100% clear cut when that happens. I mean, this is actually like, I guess, echoing what John said in the previous presentation, that with Landlord Go, they were changing the business model from purely organic to a paid model. So that's when the shift happened for them, when they actually start scaling up with marketing money and measuring return on ad spend instead of just putting a game out there and relying on organic traffic. So like I said, it's not always 100% clear cut when exactly that moment happens. But if you never make it to the kind of scaling up part, your kind of growth is somewhat limited. It might be a good business, it might be profitable, but your growth will be limited. Another kind of a point for context, I guess. At any given time, like the game team typically wants to work on the most impactful improvements to your game. Nobody wants to work on things that players don't care about or things that make the game worse. You might make an update every now and then that actually makes the game worse. That's quite usual, actually. We do it every now and then, but that's not the intention, of course. But as kind of the product person in the team, I found that a lot of my job is trying to figure out what's the most impactful lever for the business of Mr. Rotifier, highlighting them, sharing them with the team, and then figuring out solutions together. And like if I manage to do this well, I think like I probably earned my salary. So that's, I see, like if you're a product person in a company, in a digital consumer facing company, this is probably your equivalent product. Just like replace Mr. Rotifier with whatever product you're building. And then on to the examples. So the first problem is quite obvious. Or actually, like a couple of the first ones are. If you put out a game that has content for 3 days, the day 3+ retention will not be great. So what I propose to the team, that let's just like we know that our early retention is good, and it was pretty good. We also saw that some players were still playing the game even though they finished it, which was kind of like, we just thought that they'll quit playing it, but they were just grinding the same word again and again. So that was also a good sign. So we kind of were quite sure that if we just add content, add things to do in the game, we could improve the day 7+ numbers. And so what we did, we added more world content. We added worlds 3 to 5. We balanced early world content. So from the ruthless difficulty, we made it so that it's a little bit of a better experience for players, so the game doesn't just slap you in the face immediately. We also added an end game loop, and this was like something we did like very early. So one of the first features we added to the game was this end game loop. So when you get to the end of the game, the game doesn't throw you out. It says that, hey, now you unlock this endless mode that you can play forever. And there's a leaderboard, and it resets every 7 days. And you every 7 days, you basically start afresh and play these endlessly more and more challenging levels and see who gets the farthest. So I think the takeaway here, make sure that players have something to do in the game. It doesn't have to be awesome, but it needs to be something. And this also kind of buys us time to build the worlds from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. Problem number 2. This also happens if you make a game fast. So we made the decision early that the game we launch in 2019 will be 100% client driven. No server, no backend, no progress sync, no anything. And you can kind of make the mental math that like we were not confident at starting to put like 10K a day in marketing to a game that had no progress sync. That could be like a bad thing. So we just thought, okay, let's take the time to build the back end, migrate to it, and we can start spending marketing money after that. And that's what we did. At the same time, I think we added other crucial things like ability to force update the game, support for localization, like technical stuff like that. Kind of must-haves that don't have an immediate impact, but you just have to do it. Problem 3, performance issues on Android. I'm highlighting this because I see many companies ignore it, even though it's so obvious and relatively easy to fix typically. So most of the games I've worked on, performance on low and mid-tier devices has been one of the single most impactful retention improvements that we've seen. So what we did is we implemented performance analytics, so the game would tell us basically which levels, or analytics events would tell us which levels and which devices have FPS drops and low average FPSs. And there's other technical tools for this as well. I think like why this gets ignored so much is that fixed performance issues on your backlog or whiteboard or wherever you put it is so vague that it's hard to take that up in your sprint or whatever project management tactic you're using. So kind of make sure that your engineers take the time to actually figure out where the performance issue problem is and figure out how to fix it. Because like if you ask them, they might say, I don't know. And then you're like, okay, then let's not take this up next sprint. Just let them do their job and give them the time. So what we just did was then 2 modes, low-end device mode, high-end device mode, and so on. Trivial, but you should do it. And then like off to the kind of a bread and butter of free-to-play. This is also where we kind of started to diverge from Archero and took some leaves from the playbook of RPG games like Empires and Puzzles, Summoner's War, even Puzzles and Dragons, because I think what I've seen over and over again that in the end game, complexity of features is usually not a problem. Like we decided that we'll have more depth and we're okay if the end game features are a little bit complex. So we added first characters and a daily event system. These changes alone actually don't do anything for our game, but we were kind of expecting that in a sense. They kind of paved the way for the next batch of features, which is adding character gacha, adding battle pass, adding a special events framework with gacha offers. So I think this is kind of the biggest pivot that we did to the game, in the sense that we even retroactively added the gacha. You used to be able to buy the characters, and that was it. So we added a sharding system and a gacha. And basically, it was because we noticed that players play the game. The monetization is quite at a high, like IAP monetization is quite at a nice level for the first 7 to 14 days. After that, it tapers off and stays lower at the lower level. But the players who spend the money, they still stay in the game, right? So they just spend the money, continue playing, no longer spend. My hypothesis was that, I mean, these high value players just run out of things to spend money on. So, I mean, let's add something valuable there. And not just something that you can buy once, but something that we can add content and then you can buy it again and again and again, like a character gacha, which is the typical monetization feature for the depth for monetization depth. We also added battle pass because we actually like the feature a lot. That was one of the reasons. But the other reason is there's a business reason as well, which is that it's monetization breadth. So you get a higher conversion, but less money per user with the battle pass. For the character gacha, you get less conversions, but a higher depth of spend per user. And typically, some players would only get the battle pass. Some high value players would spend on both. And battle pass actually also monetizes on engagement, which is just a beautiful design. And I guess the takeaway here is first that sometimes you need to build something a bit before you can show the rewards. And I mean, this path, kind of the meaningful end game experience, it's something that we're still doing today. Retention, monetization, there's something you will continue to work until eternity. No live game service survives for long without some new content. As a developer, you may have a say in what type of content that is, but you need something new for the players. And I mean, successful live games can sustain for years. Loyal players will stick around for years. You should hold on to those players. So make sure they have, again, something to do. And last but not least, some like future stuff that we're working on. The more mature your game is, the less obvious it will become what's the biggest thing you can do for the game, right? Like my most important job. It's getting harder every update. So the larger amount of the work that you do will be incremental improvements instead of these obvious step ups. Like, for example, actually our battle pass and gacha system both had like very measurable monetization impact. But this doesn't mean that you can't still improve the game, and you should continue trying. So one of the things that we are focusing on right now is the top of the funnel, so trying new concepts in UI, constantly looking for new fresh concepts to try out. Another thing is taking a look at like even further down the line than day 30 to day 90 plus retention. Still adding content, still balancing content, still adding meaningful goals for players to reach past day 30. And I mean, like, the smaller things that are also important to like once you do the big things out of your way, you have time to focus on the smaller things. For example, just optimizing the amount of ads that you show in your game. That can have actually like a substantial impact on the top line. And yeah, this is just some examples. All in all, I think like we've already come a long way with Mr. Rotifier. I also think we'll be working on it for a long time. Maybe to condense my talk into 3 takeaways, like good things always come in 3s, right? So first, like the part that I talk about the company and its purpose, I think like if you found a company, think about that your company should have a purpose. I think it's very powerful, and it unites the founders, and at best, I think I've seen that it also unites the people that come after the founders. There's no cliques in our company. I think like everyone is just one group, and I think part of that is because we figured this culture thing and the purpose thing early. At least I'd like to think that. The second thing is about new games. So create new games boldly, but with razor sharp focus. So be bold, but be pragmatic about it. Scope is your best ally, and it can be also your enemy if you don't manage it. And finally, operate your games diligently and base your decisions on solid hypotheses. Be honest to yourself about the impact as well. This is my talk for today. Thanks everyone for listening. We are actually hiring. There's at least, I think, a programmer position and UI artist position open. Also, feel free to send an open application if you so wish. And Marius, I think as we have now time for the Q&A and questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mika, for like really interesting presentation. And yes, let's start with some Q&A. There are quite a few questions. So probably like the first one, maybe we can start that. Probably we can start from John, because in some way it was a little bit related to his presentation. Do you think nowadays it's feasible to survive in mobile gaming just basing on organic? Yeah, so it's like still the doable strategy nowadays.
Well, it depends what survival means. Is it bread and water or bread and butter plus water? That's the first question. I mean, we have a problem because we have 55 people. So doing this on organic would be I would say very risky. I mean, making a new game based on organic, no way. We will not decide to make any game like that. But definitely, if you are starting from your bedroom, or if you are starting, with limited funds, the organic will be the first, which will tell you, will it fly? So it is good for the beginning, but obviously later you need to catch up with some UA competences. Actually, sooner you do that, the better.
And Mika, like how can you see it from your casual perspective?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what John said about it. It's possible still today, I guess, but I would not base my business on it. You can't really plan for it anymore, I think. You could still kind of plan your business around organic traffic maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, but I don't think that's been the case anymore for a couple of years. So you're kind of relying on luck a little bit too much for my taste.
Thanks. Yeah, so maybe asking you the next question we get from the crowd. It's probably more to you, John. Will you be able to do in-app purchases in China?
We believe so. Yeah, having ESBN number actually means that you can do that. It's a very difficult way. I mean, I would say, first of all, if you are thinking about China, go to China. I know it is difficult now, but but if you will survive the quarantine, there are so many, at the moment, hungry Chinese publishers, who will explain you everything. If you would like to do it on your own, then there is a different story. I would say it's rather impossible, but there are some slightly chances, because technology parks they are opening through all the China, and maybe you will be not in Shanghai or Beijing, but in some smaller city, and they will open you with the open arms. So this is possible. We haven't done it yet. So, and we were trying for from 2018 to do so. We were very close. We have set up the Chinese company, but this new regulation came up in 2019, and we had to restart the process.
Thank you. Yeah, fingers crossed so it will be quick introduced.
And probably this kind of is more related to Mika, because you talk a lot about that. But maybe if you could share a bit more about how to prioritize those features that is most impactful. Yeah, because as an instant, especially in such culture, there can be different views, like different sometimes preferences. I know that from experience that some guys really don't like ads, for example. Some says, okay, it's not really good in gaming. Some say, okay, we should really focus on A, B, C. Like, what is your view on that?
Yeah, I guess I'll first tackle the the subject matter part of the question, and then the, I guess, more like political part of the question. So just out of like mapping out what features will do the most impact, I think it's part art and part science. There are certain techniques for it, like impact mapping. You take like feature sets or features and try to figure out, just analytically thinking, that what has the biggest impact, what has the lowest impact, how much effort will it take to make this, and so on. And then you kind of put them in a 4x4 matrix. And then, I mean, you might then ask, like, how do I know like what the feature's impact will be? You obviously don't know before you do it, but there's a lot of signals that you can use to figure out from the market. You can take a look at Sensor Tower or App Annie data and check when certain competitor games did certain features and see if the monetization improved, for example, for those. You can use your previous experiences. Like when you do this long enough of a time, you kind of get the catalog of features that you did before. You can use that to kind of figure out what's the probable impact. You also want to kind of use just basic problem solving. So when you think of a feature, always think about, like, if I put this feature out, how many players will actually access this feature? If it's just 10%, and I'm planning that it will do this and this and this, like, should I actually not do this feature and instead do the other feature that will be available for 80% of the players? So things like that. Try to think about the analytical path that takes you toward, okay, now it improves monetization by 10%, because when you kind of dive into it, you will find that it means that players will need to spend more hard currency, and it means that you need to have a sink where players use the hard currency, and so on. So kind of that type of analytical thinking helps with both designing the features and kind of comparing them to each other. And then to the other part of your question, which is like there might be different views in the team, I think it depends on team by team. I've worked both in environments where it's more hierarchical, where it would be a single person's sole responsibility to prioritize the backlog. Sometimes I have been that person, sometimes it's been someone else. Then it's clear cut, right? Then you have authority and they do the decisions. For us, I think it's more of a discussion that is based on trust between the team members. So what we try to achieve in the company is that we always try to kind of take away the politics and the ego and try to just talk about the issue at hand. So then what actually happens is that the different viewpoints end up resulting in a better decision than like a political fight, and that's actually worked for us quite well. But in our case, typically then the decision maker for feature prioritization would be probably me, but it could be someone else as well if they would like to take that responsibility.
But in this case, like, follow up, like making it follow up on that. So like, if you decide for the specific feature, you do like the A/B test, like, okay, 50% of that gets that feature and 50% doesn't, or like we are saying, okay, once we made a decision, we are just releasing that, and we'll see as the outcome of based on the data, for example.
I think both of those approaches have their place. If you're building something of like a bigger feature set, it may be difficult to like hold it down to single A/B tests, and it's actually it could be hard to do that. I mean, we actually haven't A/B tested a lot at all, but I think like right now, because like what I said about the more mature your game is, the less obvious the things that you can improve will become. So I think what will happen actually this year, that we move more onto smaller tweaks and more onto split testing those. So my answer would be, it depends. I think both have their time and place. I would not advise to split test everything you put in your game. I think it's a waste of time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's quite interesting. Also, a follow-up question, more general, but also about the approach. Do you think it's better to create something totally unique or take thoughtful approach based on something that is successful? John, would you like to start? You're muted.
Yeah.
You're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. So creating something new means huge risk, and it means that you cannot benchmark yourself. And this is actually for the most of our experiences, that we cannot benchmark ourselves to some racing game or to some hyper casual game, because there is no other game which is where you can where you have at least 1 million downloads, and it is about investing or trading properties in real world. So the problem is that we don't have a competition. Of course, we have indirect competition. Of course, there are many geolocation successful games, but none of them has the properties as the major thing. So actually, we don't know. Are we good? Are we good? Are we performing good? Very good, or just this is all mediocre, and we should come up. So this is the moment actually when you need to have some friends at Google, and you need to ask them questions, and they will create especially for you, the report where they will be trying to explain you, to who you can benchmark, and what kind of game you have. This is very related because at the beginning you had categories of the games. And now, a lot of games, are multi-genre. They are connected with few categories. So, we are waiting. I would say, as the developers, that the Google and Apple will do the cleanup, and actually they will say, business geolocation games, for example, for us, because then we will be able, to benchmark. But this is a niche in the niche. So the question is, how do you feel about it? About making, 3055, racing game, which has, this unique part of changing the engine, or, this kind of colors, or you actually, would like to do, the totally blue ocean, where you would like to, everything will be new for you. The second approach is great, but it's very costly, because you cannot benchmark yourself once again. Myself, I would go always for creating something totally unique. Why? Because this is fun. This is the moment when you are creating something from scratch, and you are seeing that it is growing, it is flying. That was your concept. This is all about gaming industry. You have full of creative peoples, and creative people, they want their concept to be on the market. This is this moment that they are the guys who knew that this will fly. So it depends of the approach, depends of what your investors will let you do. I would say.
Thanks. Yeah, no risk, no fun. Mika?
And Mika, what is maybe your approach on that? How do you think?
Yeah, I think I don't think those are mutually exclusive, to create something unique and take a thoughtful approach based on something that is successful. I would actually argue that landlord games are kind of both. So I would kind of say that your concepts that you start work on, they should kind of be a little bit of both. I would think of games as my favorite form of entertainment, right? And in entertainment, any popular entertainment usually has a precedent. Popular music, you've heard the element somewhere else. popular movies are based on something you've already maybe experienced. There's always a precedent. There's something familiar, but there's something fresh. If your game concept has no familiarity at all, it's something so unique that people have seen nothing like it ever before. There's a big chance that it's a little bit too weird, and I think like the ideal game concept has both of those characteristics.
Thank you very much. And maybe like follow you talk a little bit about that. How did you know that your game is UA ready? Yeah, and someone was even asking how actually how you did it in case of you are not really big company, you are like you started like the indie. How actually was your approach on that? Yeah, how you were able to do the UA and user acquisition and the whole approach related to that.
So I guess this was for me.
Yes, Mika.
Okay.
Starting from you.
Yeah. Okay. So there's two questions. How did you know your game is UA ready? And then I guess the other part about like funding it. I think like the easy answer is that you try. You should start just investing money in campaigns and start measuring return on ad spend as soon as you can do it. And it's not going to be easy all the time. It might be very vague in the beginning if you're actually getting your money back or not, but at least you have some signal. And if you're very lucky, actually, the first dollars that you spend on Facebook or Unity ads or Google, maybe Google might take a little bit of more time before it's actually like stabilizes and you get it profitable. But depending on the network, sometimes you can see immediate return on ad spend. That's a good signal. And you can start small nowadays. You can start with 100 to 200 euros per day budgets, and it's possible to if you keep doing that for some weeks, it's possible to actually get a maybe better signal than you'd expect, I'd say. But you do need to kind of know what you're doing. So hiring a person that knows something about UA makes sense, or at least talking to your network about it. And then you had another question there that was about the funding of it. So I guess a lot of our funding is quite publicized. The first 6 months we worked on angel money, so we had like 300K in angel as a kind of angel round, and then we raised a seed round in I think it was February or March 2020. That was like 1 point something million. So we started the testing with the angel round that we had. So that was like 100 to 200 euros a day. And kind of when we run out of our angel round money, then we were kind of running out of money actually when we raised our seed round. So we then got some more funding after that. And with the seed round, we then were able to grow the game to the stage where we were able to then raise our Series A round. So that kind of worked out quite nicely for us.
And Zbig, in some way, it's kind of connecting to the kind of next question, did UA work for you from the beginning? What was kind of your experience on that?
Well, first of all, we didn't have anybody who was the user experience competences inside the company. So for several months, we were struggling to actually try to interpret the data we were getting. And the first months were terrible, I would say, because we were trying a lot of channels. and this building was everything based on one creative. It was based on of things which you shouldn't do, and things that the experienced person will tell you very quickly that you should do it differently. So it took us firstly 6 months to actually figure it out, the process. Then another few iterations of 3 months, and now we can say that we know a big part of it. It's still we don't know what it means, to buy traffic for $500,000 per day. We don't know how the system works on that perspective. But from the beginning, I would say it's very important that the entire company needs to understand this process, because this process is related to growth, and if you are making things for growth, you need to do a lot of things, not just that there will be one person who will do it for you. No, it's all connected, and it's a system. And so starting from your graphic design department or your graphic designer, going further to your analytical team. So you need to understand what the numbers are coming up. You need to have people who do the math and who can calculate things. And based on that, there's a learning, actually I would say the learning curve is a process. You are getting better with the time. But at the same time, from the business perspective, you need to understand your cash flow and understand what happens when this return is coming back. So you need to have this sorted out. If you sort this out, then it's getting easier. But just after a couple of months, you'll have the real understanding of your product. What channels, what markets, are actually good for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Always, I'm sure like the time is very important. You always have to get some perspective to collect the data and then read it properly. I think we have the last question. I don't know if it's from Thomas, our future speaker, but maybe. If so, best. What kind of CTR makes you say gameplay video is successful? Mika, would you like to start?
It's a very specific question. I might need to ask my colleagues like what their answer for it is. I can say something though, like for new prototypes that we would put on the market, we actually measure IPM, which is like CTR plus then also the install rate, or those combined. And for rewarded video, we are kind of aiming at least 10 IPM, so about 1% conversion from impression. But you should be careful with any single number, because the context is so important. It matters a lot which type of a game you're creating. It matters a lot which geos you're working at, which platform, and also maybe most of all, which placement is it. So what's the context of the ad placement itself?
Okay, thank you very much, guys. We are coming to the end. So thank you really, for spending time with us. Thank you really for great, sharing of the knowledge and experience. Really appreciate it, and I really wish you the good day. Thank you to everyone who watched us. Really please fill out the short questionnaire on the YouTube, on the close to the video you're watching. And of course, please check out the next webinars happening at the GameCamp website, and the next one will be end of the June, it will be one of the last ones before probably the summer. And again, thank you guys for your time and for your sharing. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.